I'm Sacramento County District Attorney Tin Ho. Thank you for listening to the Justice Journal podcast. This podcast series engages our community in issues that impact public safety and shares how our office is ensuring justice in the courtroom and in the community while achieving our mission of Semper Justitia, which in Latin means always just.
Welcome to the Justice Journal podcast. I'm your host, Shelley Oreo. Today's podcast is a third of a four-part series on the topic of DUI, which is driving under the influence of alcohol, and DUID, which is driving under the influence of drugs. Today, we're featuring two of the Sacramento County DA's longtime DUI/DUID prevention partner organizations, Arrive Alive California and MAD. I'm joined by CEO of Arrive Alive California, Angela Webb, and MAD Victim Services Specialist, Rhonda Campbell, as well as Sacramento County Deputy DA, Gregory Hayes. Can I have all of you introduce yourselves, including a little bit about your background and your current roles? And Angela, we'll start with you.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Angela Webb. I am the CEO of Arrive Alive California. And a little bit about my background is I've been in prevention work and crisis responders for over 19 years. I'm coming up on 20 years and very passionate about it, and continue on with the mission on prevention.
Great. And Rhonda?
My name is Rhonda Campbell. I am a Senior Victim Services Specialist with MAD California. My background is I've been in this position for about 6 years with MAD. And what led me to this job is the loss of my 12-year-old sister to a drunk driver in 1981. I also am very passionate about the cause and helping victims. So I do whatever I can to help.
Thanks, Rhonda. And Greg.
Hi, my name is Gregory Hayes. I'm a Deputy District Attorney here in the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office. I've been a Deputy District Attorney for a little under 10 years at this point. During that time, I've worked in many different assignments. I'm currently assigned to the misdemeanor unit as a lead Deputy District Attorney. Specifically, I'm the grant-funded prosecutor assigned to the Office of Traffic Safety Grant for DUI and drug DUI prosecution, education, and outreach. Funding for this program was provided by a grant from the California Office on Traffic Safety through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. What you're listening to right now is part 3 of 4 of a podcast series related to driving under the influence.
So this episode is really going to focus on the partnerships, as I mentioned. We do a lot of work with Arrive Alive California and MAD. Before we do that, Gregory, can I have you start by just laying the foundation of the different DUI charges?
So a few different charges that are the primary charges we prosecute here in Sacramento County and in the state of California. There are 2 primary DUI statutes. One is under 23-152. There are parts A, B, F, and G are the primary that we prosecute. Those are DUIs. A is if somebody is driving while under the influence. B is if they drive with a blood alcohol level above 0.08. The F is for prosecuting anybody who drives while under the influence of drugs. And the G section is for anybody who drives while under the influence of the combined influence of drugs and or alcohol. We also prosecute 23-153, which is similarly laid out with sections A, B, F, and G. The difference there is the 23-153 is prosecuted as a DUI with injury. Both the 52 and 53 could be prosecuted as either a misdemeanor or a felony. We see most of the time here in Sacramento County that they are prosecuted as misdemeanors. In order to get to a felony on a 23-152, it has to be the person's 4th within a period of 10 years. Somebody can be prosecuted on a DUI with injury under 23-153 for their very first offense if it does cause an injury at a felony level. We also do prosecute other charges, including vehicular homicides under 191.5. So that's where somebody is DUI or under the influence of drugs and kills another individual on the roadway. And recently our office has been prosecuting and winning cases which are tried as second-degree homicides. Those are called Watson murders, where somebody has been advised previously on a prior DUI that driving under the influence is gravely dangerous. And if you kill somebody else, you can be prosecuted for homicide. Those people do get prosecuted for homicide. And on one of those, they could face up to 15 years to life.
And in terms of the scope of the problem, this is for all of you. Greg, do you have any stats or just any anecdotal information? And again, if any of you want to chime in on that.
So I pulled the stats for the fiscal year. The federal fiscal year goes from October 1st until September 30th. So the most recent full year that we've had went from 2021 until 2022. And here in Sacramento County, in that one fiscal year, our office filed 3,993 just general misdemeanor DUIs, which is the 23-152. We also filed 179 misdemeanors that were DUI with injury. So in total there, you're talking pretty close to about 4,200 misdemeanors were filed in that fiscal year. We also filed a number of felonies, which appears to be about 279 felonies. 113 of those were for the 23-152, which means that person did not cause injury, but due to their prior record, their DUI would be a felony. So these are people who are repeat offenders. We also filed 166 cases that as felonies that are DUIs with injuries. During that fiscal year, we also filed 13 vehicular homicides under section 191.5. And comparing those numbers from 2021 and 2022 to the previous fiscal year of October 1st of 2020 till September 30th of 2021, the numbers are slightly up. We did prosecute more misdemeanor and felony cases, but thankfully the number of vehicular homicides did drop. The previous year from 2020 to 2021, we filed 26 vehicular homicides. So that was about halved in the most recent fiscal year.
Interesting. Rhonda or Angela, do you want to add anything about just your insight into the current problem still that continues?
I guess for me, I would just add that MAD works closely with the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration to get current numbers and things. And our most recent report shows us that DUI is at an all-time high with a 14% increase. We're at our highest level in 16 years.
And that's national.
Yes, and a lot of those stats were gathered during the COVID shutdown. So even though people were driving less, the DUI numbers significantly increased.
Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
I believe one of the stats that MAD had up on their website, and this has been documented repeatedly when we go out and talk to schools, is teenagers these days believe that driving high, 2/3 of the teenagers, 2 out of 3, believe they drive better. So it's imperative that the education component is getting to youth as early as possible to debunk these myths that they are circulating among themselves.
So great segue, Angela. The next thing I want to talk about is I want to focus on the Real DUI Court in schools, since that's one that all of us are involved in. And so why is it so important? You just mentioned one reason, to reach students, people early on about prevention. You just mentioned one reason why. What are some others that you think it's important to be out in the schools and talking to people young?
Absolutely. We love to go out to the high schools. We do a follow-up program from the Ever 15 Minutes. We don't compete with that program, but the Real DUI Court in Schools program completes it, if you will, and rotating on their off years. We're right there to continue the prevention education. However, the group that we truly do love going to is the middle schools, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We believe that is the time in their life they're starting to form their own decisions, and high school is the time they start acting out these decisions. So it's a perfect time to really give them truth on the subject, facts on the subject, and then give them tools that if they were ever to be in a situation, these are some of the things that you can do to protect yourselves and protect your friends. So the earlier the intervention and prevention programs that we can do for those grades is optimal in what we're seeing getting into the high schools as well. So
at the middle schools, that's a different program.
It's a little bit different. It's the
Mhm.
same messaging, same type of format, but we come at it with a different, more age appropriate conversations. The
Okay.
judges that we work with at the Superior Court, our DAs, everyone is aware that we take a different transition into their lingo, their language. You know, we get to them where they're at and in their language. And that's middle school, high school, or of course, college as well. But yeah, and I think one of the most important fact is we always allow an opportunity for students at any of our programs to have the microphone and ask questions back. And I will tell you, year after year, the judges love the middle school questions because they're so real. We get to some really good questioning. One that continues to come up is, what do I do if my mom and dad have been drinking? And this is being asked in front of all of their peers, not so much to put that person or that family on the spot, but to let them know, you know what, this is real life, guys. This is, what do we do in this situation? So to get their minds thinking on the scope of the situation.
And Rhonda and Greg, do you have anything to add about the importance of reaching students young?
Yeah, I would add, MAD also has several programs that encompass those various age groups, middle school, high school, and college. And even now we're developing and implementing a new program to reach kids at the elementary school level. And like Angela said, we're using stuff in their terms, their lingo, their way of understanding. But the fact of the matter is, research has shown us that in the United States, children will have their first thoughts or experimentation with alcohol at the age of 9. So if we're not getting them early, we're missing the boat. Like Angela said, by the time they get to high school and college, they're acting on those. We need to get them the information while they're developing it and explain to them and let them know what can happen and how to prevent it.
Perfect. So let's focus on the Real DUI Court in Schools program. Angela, I know we've talked about this before on a prior podcast, but can you just again refresh what that program is and the different players involved?
Yes, absolutely. So the Real DUI Court in Schools program is essentially transferring a case, a first-time DUI offender, from the courthouse downtown to take place, the sentencing and taking the plea right in front of all of the students. Many times this is a full school assembly, or upper gradesmen, or an entire middle school. And we essentially just transfer the case. So we have the judge, we have the DA, we have the defense counsel, and we have the defendant. So the students actually get a two-prong approach to this type of an education. They're learning not only about the judicial branch and the roles in which all the court members take place in, but they're also learning about driving under the influence, the impact and the ripple effect that it does in so many cases. And then we bring in our speakers from MAD to really conclude and get that heart change. I always say, in order to change attitudes and perceptions, you must get a change of heart. And that is where the victim impact part is so vital to the program as well. So we work with the judges of the Superior Court, DA's office, sometimes a public defender's office, private counsel, and of course MAD to facilitate just an exceptional program.
And Greg, can you go into what your particular role is with that program?
Sure. I'm involved in the program in a few different ways. One of the first things that I do is I try to locate ideal defendants or defendants who would be willing to come and participate in the program. This is somebody who has actually been charged with a real DUI and who is going to go in front of potentially, we've done high schools with over 1,000 students. So they're going to come in front of 1,000 students, admit to their wrongdoing. And typically in these programs, the judge, if the defendant's willing to, the judge will ask the defendant some questions and they'll answer those questions about what they were doing on that particular day and what jail was like and what their thoughts were. So I try to locate defendants typically who are young. I want people only who it's their first time DUI, people who are regretful of the decision they made and understand that it was a mistake, and people who preferably I think won't come back to the judicial system. That's always my goal with any case, in DUIs in particular. I don't want people to come back. If they make the mistake once, come to the judicial system, admit to the mistake, and never do a DUI again. And then the second part of the program is to actually go on the day to the particular school and participate in the program. And so part of that then is coordinating with the defense attorney and the defendant for them to be there and then on the day, reciting very specific factual details about the incident of the case, or what happened on the date of the incident, and then proceeding with the plea, just like it would go in court. When that's done, typically the judge will give a short speech, I'll give a speech, and the defense attorney will give a speech. So I talk to the students about my experience as a DA, about what the role of a DA is, about some of the things that I've seen. I normally talk in detail about vehicular homicides, and then just talk to them generally about having a plan. And I think that's kind of the big theme that we often have with these students, is you have to have a plan in advance to avoid the DUI, and really try to convince them not to get in a car with somebody else who's DUI and not to drive themselves. It's really not worth the risk. And then at some point, the students do always get the microphone and they ask questions. It is the most entertaining part of the program. You never quite know what they're going to ask or what they're going to say. So you're always a little on edge, but they ask generally very smart questions, and I really enjoy that part. And then I sit back and watch the MAD speaker as MAD gets involved, and really MAD is at the end of the program the one that captivates all of the students, and I think the one that has the greatest impact on them.
Mhm.
Yeah. Angela, do you have an estimated the total number of students or how many schools or any numbers like that since you've been working or been bringing the program to schools?
Yes, we are over 200,000 students. Now, this is a span of about 13, 14 years. We're going on our 14th year. We've changed the program up over the years considerably just to pinpoint the most important parts of the program. I think we've nailed it now. But yeah, our reach is about 200,000. We are statewide. Believe it or not, 2020, even though that was the year of the pandemic, our silver lining is we developed 2 additional formats to bring this inside the living room and inside the schoolrooms, through our virtual format, as well as our classroom format. We worked with some of the judges to put together our classroom with curriculum and all of that. So although we love to do this in person, we do have 2 other formats available for schools throughout the entire state to do this. So we're well over about 200 schools now, multiple counties, multiple districts, and about 200,000 students. And I would like to add on to what Greg says, and picking the defendant, the selection and all of that, and they have to be remorseful, and there's several things, and the idea is that they're not going to they learned from their mistake, they're not going to do it again. And I have to give kudos to the entire team behind this program that we've developed, the civism behind this. We only have 1 known defendant in 13 years who have had a second DUI.
Wow.
Those are
That's
huge
amazing.
numbers. That's
yes.
huge. It was the first person was last year, and one of the participating DDAs reached out to me and gave me an email and goes, "I can't believe it." But I mean, in 13 years, as many times as we've done this, we've never had a repeat DUI offender. So
wow. Well, this is for everybody. What's the feedback been? And Rhonda, you as well, in terms of what you've heard, that feedback that MAD's received. What has been the feedback?
Well, it's not only what I've heard in my work with Angela. I actually got to take part in one of these programs and share my story. And I always say these are the best audiences. Kids just get it. And like Angela said here, they ask questions that you wouldn't believe, that you don't expect to come out. And I've actually had kids come up to me in private afterwards at one of Angela's events and say, my mom drives impaired a lot. What can I do? We give them that platform and that opportunity, not only to engage in the entire program, but to have a moment to engage privately. And you never know what that one moment or that one question is going to do in that kid's life to make a difference. So I think that these are invaluable for many reasons.
Wow. Angela or Greg?
Feedback I've gotten has been generally very positive. At the end of the assemblies, we wait around for a little while, and students always come down out of the bleachers and they ask questions that they didn't get a chance to. Normally the microphone's handed around, and there's a limited amount of time. So by the end, there are extra kids who have extra questions that didn't get asked. And I've had a number of students who came and thanked me personally for coming. And I've had others who've asked us to return in the future, or asked us to return for days where they have people come in and talk about what they do for work. And so overall, the feedback has been very, very positive from my experience.
I agree both with Rhonda and Greg. The moment that our prevention education programs aren't working, it's time to pack it up or change it up. And I can say with all certainty that just from the teachers and administration's point of view, this is making an impact. The youth are always, we do pre, post, and end of the year surveys to capture the impact, to make sure this is impacting them and helping them with their choices. And we're still running at about 94 to 96%. They want their friends and families to see this program. And for youth to give off a number like that, being anonymous, that speaks volume. We try to make this as easy as possible for the administration. They don't need one more thing on their plate. The most difficult thing that they have to do is come up with a date and a time, and we will handle everything else. They don't have to pay for anything. We take care of the coordination with the district attorney's office and their selection of the defendant, work with the judges and the speakers, and it's seamless from the moment we step on till the moment we leave, and it's impacting. And that's at the bottom of the line, at bottom of the day. That's what is so important. It is making a difference, and it is getting these kids to think about the big picture, because the moment that they say it can't happen to them is the moment that they put themselves on a potential victims list. So getting them to think outside their reflection on the mirror, out of the screen time and into this big world of their decisions will shape their destiny. And that's what it's all about. So.
And what about the program do you think is so effective that makes the impact? I mean, is it all the components together, the real defendant, the real court hearing, the MAD advocate at the end, the heart change, Greg, that you mentioned? And what are your thoughts about why this is so effective? Because I've seen a lot of other programs that don't seem to be as effective.
And again, this isn't something that we just threw together. This has been a work in process over the years. And okay, this element works. This needs to be shorter. This needs to be longer, and really fine tuning it to speak to these kids. This is for them. At the end of the day, we need to understand where they're at. One, it's real. It's not a what if scenario. They want to know, one, from subject matter experts. I mean, hello, we're bringing in a judge to talk to them, right? We bring in law enforcement to talk to them. They get to ask questions, and it's right there on the spot. That's the other component. And we move fast. So obviously, attention spans going to a 6th grader or an 11th grader or all of the in between, you need to keep their attention. And I can tell you that in the 90-minute programming that we have, you can hear a pin drop throughout because of the elements and how quickly we switch from one to the next.
And to me, having done the program, the whole program I think is effective together, but the real key to me is the MAD advocate at the end.
Yeah.
The MAD advocate comes forward, and sometimes throughout the assembly, you will hear chatter on the sides, but you can always tell when the MAD advocate is speaking, because that is when you can hear a pin drop. And I've seen several of them where the entire audience of 1,000 students is quiet. Or you turn around, we were at St. Francis High School, and there was Cody, who was previously on this podcast, gave a MAD advocate speech at St. Francis High School. And when I turned around, I mean, there were 1,000 young girls all in tears.
And the judge and myself and you. I mean, we were all
it was very relatable.
It was.
There's the part where we do the plea, and I think for them it's like, okay, here's some adults in here, and this is a DUI that happened, and they might still think this wouldn't happen to me, or it's just a DUI. And then they hear from the MAD advocate who had a family member who was tragically lost to a DUI, and suddenly what they saw in the plea and what they heard from the police officer is made all the more real. And they realize that this really does happen, and this really could happen to me, and it really did happen to the MAD advocate who gave this speech at the assembly. And so I think that final piece, the MAD advocate, really just sinks in the entire message, and that's what makes it at the end of the day so effective, in my opinion.
Rhonda?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 1,000%. This program is it's real and it's raw. It's not sugar coated by any means, even though I do believe it's age appropriate. And these kids get a really big taste of not only what can happen to you as a defendant, but how your life can be impacted in a single second and change forever. That these things have long lasting impacts, and it's not always just about court and jail and fines. There are people paying much bigger prices than that.
Yeah, true.
So true.
Well, Rhonda, I'm going to give you the floor to talk about, if you'd like, MAD specific programs, whether they're targeting youth or any other programs that MAD has, and whether or not any of us are involved in those as well.
Sure, thank you. So MAD has several programs, and you have to remember when MAD was founded, it was founded for the sole purpose of intervening and making legislation tougher for drunk driving. That's always been our focus. As our organization has evolved, we've added this education piece, we've added the victim service piece, we've added layers and layers of education so that we can reach kids all the way from elementary school level to high school level. And as Angela said earlier, we meet them with their lingo, their language, their graphics, things they can understand. And one of the things that I really like about doing that is if the kids aren't having conversation at home, we're giving them the tools to start that conversation at home. Exactly the same way we would be with parents. We have a Power of Parents program where we educate parents about what's happening and how to have those conversations with your kids and open that door to have that truthful, honest, real conversation. And we have to remember, and Matt has not been remiss on this, that drunk driving is one aspect of underage drinking. And of course, that's our mission. But we have kids every day dying because of drownings, burns, head injuries, and even suicide as a result of underage drinking and drug use. All of that is covered in the MAD materials and in our presentations. We try to make that a very full circle program. And the other side of that is we also have programs for offenders. So a lot of times offenders will be required as part of their sentence to complete this MAD program, which will include what Angela and Greg were just talking about, is that a victim speaker will give a presentation. And they'll hear 2 or 3 different stories about how somebody was impacted in their life by drunk or impaired driving. And I do believe that those are making a difference.
Wow. Well, this is more for Angela and Rhonda. You've both worked in prevention for a very long time, obviously very passionate about it. Over the years, what have been the challenges and what have you found has been the most effective and where you found the most success? Because there's new challenges coming up, I'd imagine, through time. So look where we are now. I mean, Angela, I know we're focused a lot on fentanyl. So there's just always something different about what needs to be addressed. So do you have any insight into that, just because you've been both working in this for a very long time?
I think at the end of the day, we have to know our audience, and each generation that comes and goes, they have their own dynamics and associated with that. I think one of the difficulties with this generation per se is the topics that we talk about are tragic. They're not warm and fuzzy. So how can you still make an impact to a generation who doesn't want to hear bad news, who doesn't want to know about that other side of life? So it takes a special finessing going on. I don't ever want to water down the information, but the finesse of, okay, let's talk about this. We actually have incorporated debriefs after some of our presentations per the recommendation of the administrations, because they know their students. So we are willing to partner with debriefing teams and counselors and things like that. We've done that with several different programs, probably within the last 3 years, I would say, different topics, it doesn't matter, but really understanding our audience and the generation that we're working with will help us as prevention specialists, no matter what the topic is, but to truly reach them, again, in their language, where they're at, because we want to make the impact. So we just adjust and work accordingly.
Makes sense. And Rhonda?
I would say some of the challenges that we have as an organization, not only just working with youth, but working with adult offenders also, is a couple, is trifold. Number one is making people understand that driving impaired is a crime. First of all, you've been impacted, you are a victim of a crime. And then also understanding how many things can encompass this particular act. In other words, it's California. We have legal marijuana in our state. If you're talking to a 17 or 18-year-old kid that has a habit or wants to use marijuana, that's all they hear. It's legal. They don't hear any of the rest. Our programs are specifically designed to explain the rest to them, not just the law, but how they're affecting their growth and their development as a human being and how it can affect their future. That has been a big challenge. And when we start talking about that, then you get into other things. Advil, Percocet, pain pills, legal prescriptions that you've been prescribed, but you're taking improperly. We try to tell everybody there's a reason that little label's on the bottle that says do not operate heavy machinery. You're impaired the minute you get in the car and you've taken that prescription. You have to be very careful and cognizant of the choices you're making as it relates to what may be considered a legal drug or a legal act of getting in the car and driving while taking your prescription meds. So we try to make it a full circle message where all of that is laid out to not just kids, but adults too, because some adults need to hear it as well.
Oh, absolutely. Let's turn now and focus on partnerships. Angela, Rhonda with MAD in our office. I know I've been here about 15 years and we've had long-standing relationships with your organizations. What is the importance of partnering and what across all industries? I mean, how do you see that as part of the puzzle of making the impact? Like the Real DUI Court and Schools program is a prime example of that. Can you speak to the partnerships that you've had and how that affects how you work?
Absolutely. The messaging's one very big component. And when you can partner up with people and organizations that share not only in the messaging, but the mission to save lives, that is where this is at. And it's an honor to partner up with like-minded people and organizations such as the DA's office and Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and years past OTS or CHP, or there's so many that we sit down and say, how can we make this work and how can we work together? And that's a part of the success. I don't believe that there's one key person here that is making the world turn, but with all of us putting in together, that's when we start to see such movement within our communities. And we're seeing it within the mindset of this generation for sure. And it's because of the partnerships and the mission that we have before us.
And I would include schools with that, correct?
100%,
I mean, schools
yes.
are just hungry for these types of programs.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Rhonda?
I agree 100% that the more partnerships we can actively work with, maintain, and put out that mission statement, whether it be Arrive Alive, MAD works very closely with law enforcement. We all have the same ideas, the same mission, the same goal. And I always liken it to the fact that if you have 1,000 people screaming at you, you're not going to hear one person. But if you have 1,000 people screaming the same thing to you, it's going to come through loud and clear. And that's what partnerships are for us. And I think it can only make our mission better.
Right. This is, I think, clear. You talked a little bit about it before, but what motivates you both to keep going through challenges, through changing times? Angela, reworking the program along the years. I mean, I've seen the program so many times, and you come in with the same level of energy and passion. So, I mean, Rhonda, I know you have a very personal story about this, but what can you share about what keeps you going after all these years?
For so many years, I worked as a crisis responder for several different counties and was my specialty was youth. It has always been youth, whether in crisis or trauma, and working with multiple different law enforcement agencies to be called out on scene. So there are certain images, and I know many law enforcement out there can attest to this, but there are certain things that just don't go away out of your memory. And I'll never forget one of the last calls that I had went on, probably after being in that industry for over a decade. I just felt a tug in my heart saying, you know what, I'm showing up late for work, because my heart started to switch from being an expert in the aftermath of grief to switching to the prevention side, like getting to the kids before these destructive decisions are made. And that's where inside, it was an internal thing. So I've seen the destruction of bad decisions along the way for many years, and believe that what we do and getting into the schools and reaching these kids is so vital for them to understand. I mean, us as adults, we know their brain isn't even fully developed until they're 25. They can't think scientifically. They cannot think through consequences, reasoning, judgment, unless it is presented to them in prevention. So I'm an advocate for that. And every time I'm able to step foot on a campus, I mean, it's just an excitement to be able to truly serve our community, but ultimately save lives. And I still have that passion still to this day.
You certainly do. And Rhonda.
I also am a big proponent of the education piece. I think it's invaluable. And I think without that piece, our mission becomes very quiet. But I have to say, being a victim and having the story that I have, my passion lies in victim services. And through my work with MAD, I have learned along the way that people are still not getting the voice they deserve when it comes to the criminal justice system. And not often, but when it happens, I'm so honored to be able to be the one to stand there and say, let's fix this before somebody gets hurt. My victim has something to say. My victim wants to bring a picture of their child into the courtroom. And those things have been denied to people. And 41 years ago, my parents were denied any voice in the prosecution of the man who killed my sister. And I will tell you that my drive comes from standing next to the casket of my 12-year-old sister, watching them lower that and just hearing the agonizing, painful scream that came out of my mother's mouth. I get it. I know what these people are going through, and I will work my hardest to help them have a voice and a say and recourse when these things do end up in the criminal justice system.
Right. Well, we always like to close with some advice and resources. So, Angela, I'm going to start with you. What can parents and guardians do if they want your program in their schools? And are there other ways where their child could experience this program? You talked about some other formats that you're doing now too.
Yes. You can definitely reach out to myself at my email is angela@arrivealiveca.com. That's my email. The phone number is 916-761-2649. And then of course our website, www.arrivealiveca.com. Any one of those will get to me, and we can either set up a time for the school to do the live version, and I can send you the link for the classroom curriculum, which has multiple videos of the court members from Sacramento County Superior Court, and we'll even do a virtual one. So we can definitely work together with the parents to get this in the school or even in their living room. We would be happy to do that.
And Rhonda, what about for the MAD programs?
MAD, fortunately, was also able to make that large shift during our pandemic. And we do also have the option of offering a lot of our programs as an online program as well. Information about scheduling those and getting more information can be found on MAD's national website, which is www.madd.org. We have a 24-hour victim hotline that's answered by a live body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you've been impacted in an impaired driving crash, you can call 877-623-3435. And on a local level, you are free to reach out to me at my email, which is Rhonda.Campbell, CAMPBELL @madd.org. And we'll be happy to provide you with the services, how you need them, where you need them. And again, our services are also 100% free of charge all the time.
Great. And then this is for all of you. Greg, will fold you back in. What lasting advice and any other resources do you have and key takeaways that you would like for our listeners to gather from this conversation? Greg, I'm going to start with you this time.
What I'll say is the same thing we tell the students when we go to the high school assemblies. 100% of the DUIs are 100% preventable 100% of the time. And we always tell people to have a plan in advance. With the technology people have today and the smartphones they have, Uber, Lyft, they're so easy. Or just to get a ride from a trusted friend or family member. There's no reason to drive DUI yourself, and there's no reason to get in the car with somebody else who is DUI. If you have a plan in advance, it's easily preventable, and you can prevent all the heartache that victims feel when they lose family members. And for yourself, prevent getting hurt in a car accident yourself, and prevent getting a DUI and all the fines and fees and jail time associated with it. And so my main thing is just have a plan, and you can easily prevent DUIs.
Great. Rhonda?
Well, Greg kind of stole my line, because I always try to finish with exactly the same thing, which is DUI is 100% preventable 100% of the time. If you drive impaired, you're committing a crime. And plan ahead, Uber, Lyft, the smartphones, all of those things. And I just like to remind everybody, at the end of the day, the life you save by making a responsible choice just might be your own.
And then Angela.
Well, those were fantastic. I'm just going to start with that. But
we're saying over and over. So
but I think it's so important. 2 facts. What we also tell the kids is, a first-time DUI cost or offense is it's cheaper to take an Uber from here to LA and back than your first-time DUI offense. So take the cost factor right out of it. You're saving a life by planning ahead. And for parents, research has shown it takes 14 times for a child to hear something, for that to really get embedded into their mind. So when we're talking about prevention, it is so much better to have 61-minute conversations than one 60-minute conversation about such an important topic as this. So do those conversations over and over and over again, and keep on. I mean, this is what it's about, is saving lives.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. We will have more information about Arrive Alive California, MAD, the Real DUI Court and Schools program, as well as the contact information that was given on our podcast show notes page as well. So thanks again, everybody, for participating. The work that you're doing, including these podcasts, I know really does make a difference. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Cal.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Justice Journal podcast. You can find all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts, and I hope you share them with your family, friends, and colleagues.